Thank you so much, Lisa, for an informative presentation. Our next speaker is the Mayor of Fremantle, Brad Pedding.
Thank you very much. And it's great to be here with Lisa and sharing the stage. It's actually the first time in quite a while we've managed to do this, so it's really, really exciting. So, sustainability in Freo, it's such a big topic, and I'll just try and run through it. I was just going to, and there's a whole lot of things you could cover, so I'll just provide you a bit of a snapshot, but I think it's the questions and the discussion that we'll have afterwards that's probably the most interesting bit. So I'll go through each of these, but just to give you a little bit of a snapshot, certainly not everything that we're doing, and you'll have a bit of a sense of it. I mean, the biggest challenge, and perhaps the biggest challenge we will face over the next century is going to be that transition towards a low carbon economy. And it's something that we've taken really seriously at Fremantle, saying, well, what are the global targets and how do we actually make sure that we do them and actually set an example? So simply, we've got a new low carbon city plan, which I recommend. It's on our website. The targets for that are, just trying to remember here exactly, but I think it's 30% by 2020, could be even 40, and 80% by 2050, and actually having a really clear plan to get there, which is pretty challenging. We are carbon neutral, and that's actually kind of easy because you can do that through offsets. The real challenge is actually how you do that in terms of actually producing your own energy and actually taking your community with you and reducing your the carbon footprint of your whole community. One of those ways is actually saying an ongoing commitment by the council to put around about 1% of our rates into a low carbon city fund, which we then use to basically invest in renewable energy and those kinds of things. And there's just some examples there in terms of solar and wind pods, and and then that's in addition to some of the great stuff that the community's doing. I can see a few people here from the Fremantle Wind Farm who are trying to persuade our Port Authority to put wind turbines down there, which certainly has the council's support. So it's those kinds of joint initiatives that I think are really important in the energy space. Lisa talked about density and the importance of that, and I really wanted to drive that home. It's one of those kind of forgotten parts about sustainability, and often one of the more contested parts. And what the City of Perth's done in terms of totally transforming Perth, I don't know if I'm old enough now to remember going to Perth on after hours and it would just be nobody there, to actually a place where people can play and importantly live after 5 o'clock is absolutely vital. Because every person we get living around transit who don't need to drive their car to work every day, is actually also one person who doesn't need to bulldoze our coastline from Dunsborough to Domborough, which seems to be the current approach that we're taking. And that's actually really key. So Fremantle has a long way to go on this, and we've started a rather controversial, I would say, but I think very important process of getting density back into the heart of Freo. It's an amazing stat that somehow we managed not to grow our population for 40 years. It takes kind of an achievement in some ways. But also that photo, which I quite like, because if you drive down that entrance across the old bridge into Fremantle now, it kind of looks the same. And that I think says something. So, part of the reason for that was that council really said nothing could be above 3 floors. I don't quite know why that figure was there. So we've pretty radically changed that. So as you drive in, and this is an area which can be up to 7, and as you get closer into the city, it gets a bit more dense. But it's not Perth density, because we're not a CBD, and we are a different kind of place. But the idea that we could get probably about 3,000, possibly 4,000 people living in the inner city, and you get a sense as you get closer in, this is our new scheme amendments, away from the heritage areas. It's really important. You kind of need to keep your heritage areas, and that's one of the things I love about Fremantle is we have a really nice heritage precinct, but we've got a lot of pretty ugly stuff as well that we can happily put a bulldozer through. And so that's part of the plan. But we've kind of said to those landowners, look, we're willing to give you extra density, but this is actually a bit of an agreement with you, is that the more density you get is performance based. So you'll get, for extra floors, you have to provide both great design in an urban sense, but also actually green buildings. So we've got a base policy. We wanted to put it in our scheme, but West Australian Planning Commission wouldn't let us, of having a minimum of 4-star Green Star. But if you want to, but as you go higher, it goes to 5 and 6-star. So actually really that incentive base around basically carrots and sticks. But, and I guess the other thing which I forgot to put on the slide also is having to provide affordable housing. So we've mandated in our scheme that affordability is built into every development, both and a range of affordability, from social housing all the way through to key worker housing in terms of smaller dwellings, aiming it so that actually our police and our nurses and our teachers can actually live in our centres again. There was an amazing article a couple of months ago where 90% of Perth's suburbs, a person with average salary can't afford to buy in anymore, which is a pretty crazy situation that we've got into. So this is the kind of scale that we're talking about. And I guess I just want to make that distinction between, I think, what's appropriate in a Perth CBD to what's appropriate in a heritage city like Fremantle. So you've still got that kind of European hype, Berlin, Paris, Siena, which is in that picture there, with the occasional small bits jutting out. And also small dwellings. This is one thing I'm really proud of that we have done, is that we've said that without planning approval, as of right, if you want to put a small dwelling of 60 square metres or less in your backyard, you can go and do that tomorrow, as long as you've got a building licence and your block meets a certain size. It's pretty straightforward, but what that can do is all of a sudden, instead of us building the biggest houses on the planet, which is what we're very good at doing in Perth, we can actually encouraging people to build small dwellings in their backyard that can add to that diversity and affordability back into our urban centres. Transit, a big one, and again, a key ongoing issue for the future of Perth, where we haven't invested adequately in this. There's been some great investments in heavy rail. The next stage is going to be, I think Perth is going to be more sustainable, as a major investment into light rail, and it's really exciting to see the Mirrabooka announcement as the first stage, and I hope hopefully we'll see some more flow out of that in terms of the knowledge arc. Down in Freo Way, we're pretty clear that the only way that Fremantle is going to work into the future, and especially I'll just show you another slide, which is a proposal Coburn Coast, which is just to our southern border, which is part of it's in the city of Fremantle, part of it's in the city of Coburn, where 10 to 15,000 people will be in that area. Now, if they want to drive to Fremantle, that's going to be an absolute disaster. But if we can actually get proper transit linking them in, it'll actually be very good for the vitality. So this is what we've actually done, is said that we've actually mandated corridors that can only be used for that purpose, so that we don't plan good transit planning out of our existence, and are lobbying very hard to actually make sure that can happen, and it actually then gets the densities around it. As Lisa was also saying, bikes are very important. I've just come back from Copenhagen, which was extraordinary. I don't know if people who's been to Copenhagen, but it was totally, I've never experienced anything like it. More people ride to work every day than drive. So you've got 36% of the population and only 29% driving. And in fact, it was like being on a freeway, but a freeway with bikes. So it was, you have to signal and you can't go slow. And it was amazing. And I mean, what I would like to see is that I think Perth, so compared to that 36%, Perth 1.2%. And that down from 1.8 in 2000. So we're actually, there's been a little bit of a kick up possibly in the last 2 years, but we really need to turn that around radically, and that's about a very simple thing. It's about infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. People have got to feel safe and comfortable, and it's got to be convenient and pleasurable to ride. So one of the key things we're doing is just investing a lot in bike lanes, bike parking, inter-trip facilities, to make sure that it's actually fun and convenient and safe to ride around Freo. The other bit about sustainability, which I just wanted to mention briefly, is actually about a good, sustainable place is also a place that enables community, for people to come together and actually have a sense of place and space. And Perth has actually done this really well in a number of places, and I think some of the things I've seen happen around both William Street and Northbridge, and even some of the fantastic works around Brookfield Plaza actually recently, I've just been really impressed with. And I guess what we've trying to do in our squares, which are often places that people didn't feel safe and didn't want to hang out in, is actually create them as places that people do want to spend time in. That's simple things like free Wi-Fi, having an outdoor reading room, so your library comes outside, free tables and chairs, and which actually we actually leave out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's surprising how few go missing. You get the occasional person walking down the road with them, but our rangers bring them back. And free ping pong and those kinds of things actually start to create places where community can gather, where people aren't just in their houses. There's actually those great public third spaces. Finally, waste. Perhaps Lisa, you'll agree that occasionally we want to recycle our councillors, but waste, no. I've actually got a very good council. But waste is a really important one. How we do that. I mean, there's a long way to go, and this is actually where we need state government to really show proper leadership on that. I think we've got some really good schemes like the South Metropolitan Regional Council and other regional councils that are doing great recycling and other waste capture, but still too much is going to landfill, and the landfill levy should be used to reduce waste, not for general revenue. But we've just started commercial recycling, for example. So every business in Freo can get one of those bins, and we'll pick it up for free. And just as a way of actually of encouraging free commercial site recycling within our city centre. This is not Fremantle, sadly. This is Malmo in Sweden, where I was as well. So we don't quite have green roofs of that scale yet, but this is one of the things actually we're doing a really interesting project, which I just thought was worth mentioning. We've actually got, in partnership with all 3 universities, we are doing a green roof, green wall research project around how do we create green roofs and walls for the West Australian climate, and actually trialling a range of those in Fremantle as we speak. So that's quite exciting, and because I think my sense is that the next generation of great urban design and great spaces is going to include those kinds of things, those green walls and green roofs that have a range of benefits, from biodiversity to insulation to actually just creating great looking buildings. So we're pretty excited about that project, and you'll see a few of those roll out in Freo over the next little while. So just to wrap up, our vision is for a Freo that's got lots more people in it, but with that, it's part of more affordability and more diversity in terms of that housing as well. Having a place where you can live and work and play in one place, like Perth, I think has made a really amazing transformation over the last few years. And I think Fremantle needs to do that again, much more so that people who can afford to live there also can work there and play there. So you don't have to always have to travel and go to shopping malls for all the things you need. And also that transition towards a low carbon city is absolutely important. So that's kind of where we're going. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I didn't get to mention, but happy to do that in questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.